Welcome to Design Voices Elevated, the video series featuring women design leaders. I've selected 10 stories to provide a nuanced perspective of how leaders are using design to grow meaningful change in organizations. I'm Marzia Argo and I'm going to be your host. This is episode number 10, our last episode, featuring Birgit Geiberger. Welcome to Design Voices Elevated. Today we are in Amsterdam with Birgit Geiberger. Welcome, Birgit.
Thank you for having me. Exciting.
Where are we today? What's this space?
Where are we today? We are in our kitchen.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we are surrounded by your art.
That's true. That's true. We are surrounded by a lot of art and gardening and things I do outside of work. Yes.
Nice. So Birgit, tell us, what's your story?
So I'm from Hamburg, northern Germany, and I come from a family with blue and white color. With that, my father was a worker and my mom was running a company, mid-sized company. And so it was a very interesting intersection of two very different worlds. And that informed actually for me very early on to connect with everyone and to relate to everyone. So getting a high empathy, but also a bit of a system thinking. So connecting, respect, like all of these things were really shaped in early years because I was exposed to the different worlds. So then I studied graphic design in Hamburg, and
So you're a proper designer with a design
I'm
education.
a proper designer with a design education with like brushing 10-point Bodoni text and stuff. So yes, I am. I went through the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And with a lot of love and passion. It's a beautiful profession. And it was during a time when, so 93 was the first graphical web browser, right? Mosaic at that time was launched. And during that time, I studied graphic design. And instantly I was drawn to that and started very early on to like connect digital, also with my work. So my master's was then around a digital agency, combining art and digital together. So that it was an exciting time, and I learned an HTML and all of these things, and started to train actually women in agencies about like page mill and site mill and the whole information architecture and how to approach all of this. So it was very, very early years. 96, I did an internship at Photodisk in Seattle, and not only fell in love with that amazing city, but also with the localization and the complexity of localization. So Photodisk at that time, so Photodisk is now Getty Images, at that time was working on creating a web presence on a global scale. So it was all of a sudden, because digital internet became a thing, was like, oh, we need to be globally present. And so I was there to help them to actually even understand what that means from a European perspective or from a global perspective. And that was very exciting to learn how to approach this. And that followed my whole career, I think. I was working then for many years in agencies, did 28 countries for Toyota Europe, all the design, and then also really leading it and UX. And so it really, this whole complexity on like, how do you localize? What are different regions? What are different cultures? How you connect the dots? That very early on in my career. So that it's been an exciting time to come from a proper design background into stepping in a complete new era of like, okay, what is all of this? You know, what is internet here? How are we going to do this? And how do businesses react to that? And so, and that shaped pretty much my my profession along the way. And then I moved to Seattle, of course, was there for quite some years and had the honor to work for the Seattle Times, which is a family-owned company, and was doing the rebranding of the classifieds, and then moved back to my hometown with lots of love, and realized, oh, we are still in the flash age here. So user testing and all of this was not there. So the German culture is not early adopters, right?
No.
So it's a very careful, failures, frowned upon. It's a very careful culture. And I really didn't fancy that type of design. That was not my thing. So I moved to Prague and took a job at Monster, and did a complete redesign with my team for B2C and B2B from Monster, the search engine, and also on a global level. And I had teams in Malaysia and in Prague and in Boston. And that was quite an exciting ride to do so. And that was really, experience design as its best, and combined with a background of creative direction and branding understanding. That was really interesting. But it was also very long hours with and I was like, let's go back to Hamburg.
So you did go back to Hamburg.
I did go back.
Kept doing that.
I keep going back. I keep going back. It's just and then I joined a small startup. Which has a double thing. So one part was for a lot of newspapers and classified sites, and redesigning how newspapers should show up online, and how to integrate business into it, and how to integrate classifieds. And some of the things which was very exciting was actually obituaries, which was a huge business opportunity, and nobody knew. But like, really, if you dive into user and customer centricity and understanding what actually is driving people, so that was excellent and really fun. And built up a research team and a design team. And we also defined a web application, which was an editorial management software, which is still there and is building up more and more. And I loved working for that and understanding how really complex applications work. So again, complexity, connecting the dots. And then met my husband, and after a few years of going back and forth, I moved to Amsterdam. So he kind of imported me into this beautiful city.
So you've been here for a while then?
Yeah, I'm here now 10 years, 10.5 years, And also worked first agency, some freelancing, and joined Adidas. Was there for nearly 3.5, 4 years. Built up in product, actually as a leader design in product. Was building a horizontal design team, because there are so many, in organizations, there are so many parties defining experiences which are disconnected from the actual product design teams. And so I created this team which are connecting the dots across the organization. And we've done Olympics and World Cup and Run for the Ocean. It was really, really exciting times. And I also built up a research team. There. And then I moved over to IKEA, where I'm still for 3 years now. And have built up their ventures and services area, which is the new business incubator part of the organization. And that was within digital. And when I joined, we had 2 designers, one in Sweden and one in Amsterdam. And now they are close to 50 across India, Spain, Sweden, and Amsterdam. And now, starting next month, I'm moving over to another area, growth and marketing, and family and rewards, and doing consumer engagement, digital marketing, like very exciting space to do that again, like connecting the dots across the organization, building teams, trying to understand what's the business value, where can design elevate, and what's the customer voice here.
Nice.
So,
wow, what a career. Really interesting. Okay, but I have a question. So you have mentioned a couple of times connecting the dots, and I would like to understand, what does that mean in practice, connecting the dots?
Active listening, not reacting fast, take a moment to think, and understand what are the different needs of the different stakeholders, what are the business needs, and then understand what part of design, because design is such a broad term, right? So design can be drilled down to only visual design or interaction design or UX or system design, but it can, if you coordinate and understand what actually the problem is, or what are opportunities for the business where design can make create impact in strong collaboration, not by itself. I truly believe in radical collaboration. Then you can identify, okay, which part of the skill sets of design would actually be needed here? What type of research do we need? Do we need research? Does this more data analytics? Like, where are we in the spectrum? And then you can actually move in and support other teams with them together to find good solutions. So that's so the connecting the dot is understanding people, understanding what they need, not just customers, but also internally.
Do you do that guerrilla style, like you know it's important that you do it, or it is part of your remit, part of your role?
It's part of my role, but I am truly interested in people, and I truly want to make a positive impact to people and the business, and with that also the planet and like everything around. Like it's so I'm really interested in people, so I'm super curious on what people are doing and trying to meet people and have conversations. And because of my background, probably with a childhood, I had to connect with from the blue collar to the CEO, right? Which enables me now to connect with everyone because I'm not judging. Yeah. And I think everybody is equal, and we all bring our part to the table.
Working for corporations is not a walk in the park. They are tricky places. The dynamics sometimes are pretty harsh, and so I would like to understand what keeps you going. What is the reason why you're still in corporations, working with corporations?
Well, I have done a lot of profit and non-profit, and still do a lot of community work, which is actually a very, very wonderful balance to everything. Well, this is where you can create the impact, right? So if you move a needle on it, like look at IKEA, the amount of like visitors and the impact, how many lives we're touching. If you can shift a little bit, you have a huge impact already, right? If you're bringing the right conversations to the table, if you are the nagging needle in the on the side of people, on like, hey, are we inclusive here? And who's not at the table? Like bringing up this conversation makes you not always be liked, or she's complicated or something. But I truly think it's important. I'm obviously very well aware that we cannot always think about everyone, and please, that doesn't mean that we should not think about it. Like this conscious decision for or against something, then it's at least an informed decision, and it's not we're staying in the rut just because we always did it like this. So I think these ability to reflect and learn more how we can every conversation counts as something, like every time you bring up who's not at the table, or is that really the impact we want to create, and if we're doing this, what are we not doing? It doesn't mean that you put that you jeopardize business, right? But it means you do it more consciously.
It's way easier to just fit in, I guess, than nagging needle. And so
I'm not always a nagging one. But I'm also realizing that sometimes it's like...
No, but it's needed. I think it's needed. It is needed. It's like, but my point is that a lot of people, it takes guts, it takes courage, it takes, being aware about the way you actually show up in the world, and in a room full of other people that might not necessarily agree or appreciate, the push. And so I would like to understand, but it's needed. I absolutely think it's needed. So I would like to understand, how do you go around that? How do you go around the feeling of, oh, is it too much? Am I being too naggy? Am I pushing too much? Avoiding also that people perceive you as overcomplicating, for example. So how do you do this in a way that actually fits the dynamic of an organization?
Very good question, and I think I prototype my way. Because I don't have the exact answer what's the best way, and it also depends a bit on who's at the table as well, right? I'm doing a lot of reflection and trying to learn how to do it better, or was that now good or not, or what can we, but I'm such a strong believer in inclusivity and diversity, and in like having these conversations within business projects, but also within building teams, and in how do you do a reorganization, or how do you look at challenges the business is facing, and how can you, even hard business decisions, sometimes there, of course, right? But how do you navigate these? And so, yeah, I'm reflecting. I'm constantly reflecting, and I'm sometimes also have really interesting conversations with my imposter. It's like, hey, what are you doing? And a very wonderful coach of mine mentioned once to me, well, the imposter is your partner. So it's trying to protect you and trying to help you. And you can also say, hey, I got this. And so, yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's easy. Let's put it that way. And there are days where I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And then there are days when I see when these conversations actually made a difference in people's lives, or in a project, or different KPI was introduced, or things like this. And then it's like, that's why I'm doing it. So, but yeah, it's cost a lot of resilience.
Yeah. Can you make an example of, give us an example of a time when that happened, when you felt like that? What was the context?
Maybe let me give you an example when it's more about people I mentored, or people in my team, where I help them to understand if they are in the right place. So when you see people struggle sometimes in teams, and often that is a value clash they are may not aware of, or they are trying to be something they are not, because they want to be a senior now.
Yeah.
You know, this is right now this huge, well, for years already, this super young designers with very little experience expect a salary which is insane, and titles which are insane, and for the wrong reasons, right? It's and leaning into these difficult conversations on like, you're not ready, and this is why. And this is why it's not good for you if I now give you that title, because it's not my benefit. It's not for me like that I want to block someone, but I want to make people ready for this, because every step they're moving in that direction means they are soon managing other people. And then the bad leadership comes into play. And it's not because of bad intentions, but it's because they're not ready. And I think a lot of times these conversations are not held with like, are you really ready to do that step? You may be good in this part of your job or in this part of design. That doesn't mean that you're ready to actually have the responsibility for a team, because at that moment you're responsible for careers of X amount of people.
Yeah.
And I take that extremely serious. And so, and when you then have people come circling back and saying, you know what, actually I'm so glad that you blocked that, because now I learned that part and now I'm ready for the next step, and they are thriving. So that, that makes me super happy when I see that, because it's not a random, like, I want to block you. It's more like, hey, you're not ready, and this is why, and this is how I can help you with this, but I will not promote you. And if that's then a reason to go somewhere else, then it's fine. But the leadership, you know, like that's for me really important.
Okay, then that connects me to my next question, that is about what is leadership to you?
Leadership for me is responsibility. For yourself, leading yourself, leading the business, and leading the teams. And for me, leadership is not connected to the role you have. So I think that's an interesting reflection, because a lot of times leadership is connected with you have a manager title. You may have a manager title, but you should not be a leader. You know, because you just don't have it to care enough, to drive enough, to be humble. You know, good leaders are humble. You know, they know it's not about them. And that is something in organization which is unfortunately not elevated enough. It's like who sells the loudest story is the best leader, but no, it's not necessarily the thing. So this moment to look closer is important. But again, this leadership, you can be a junior designer and you be a brilliant leader because you already have the characteristics and the experience for yourself on like how you lead yourself, or how you lead a meeting, right? So that's leadership. And you can do that as a junior designer. You don't have to be a CEO. Where it gets different when you have a role. So as a manager, leading a meeting versus leading a corporation is very different from process, from complexity, from scale. Leading a meeting versus leading an organization, you can do that with the same approach, right? With the same how I show up, what are the values I'm bringing into this, how do I want to shape the experience of everyone there, and how do I want to create business results. So that's a very interesting, it's often misunderstood, and I've done a lot of research around leadership and do a lot of interviews also with other design leaders around this, with all the different cultural perspectives, and that is a common struggle also.
I love this point. You know, I do quite a bit of design leadership and practitioners coaching, and that's always one thing that I say, that, you know, you can lead from whatever standpoints you are at this specific point, right? It is a mindset, it's not a job title.
Yeah.
But my question is, you know, your definition and understanding of leadership is somewhat quite far off from the average in organizations. As you said, you know, that what is valued is not necessarily being humble or active listening, but it's more being loud and being present and being vocal. And so I would like to understand, how do you make that fit with the environment within which you're operating?
I tell you when I found out. I find that super difficult because becoming the loud person, then I'm not authentic. I am loud and I'm opinionated and but in a different way. I'm not a marketeer. That's not me. I like substance, and I value that skill as well. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I admire that. It's just not me. I think it's important to find your champions who get you and understand the value you can bring. Because I don't need to be in the front row. I'm more an empowering leader anyway, and let my people shine.
Yep.
And that if they are successful, I'm successful. You know, like it's a joint thing. We are a team. And I think that's often misunderstood from also a lot of designers who are like, there's a lot of ego involved, unfortunately, because it's also a creative part, right? So creators are.
And how do you deal with that? Actually, for me personally, in the past, that has been quite a bit hurt, quite a big problem. That, you know, in design especially, I mean, you have it in business as well, but in design you have this big creative egos, or people that think they solved it all, they've got it all, and usually my experience is with my men, I have to say, and it's been really hard to, you know, keep my cool and find a way to relate to this person that is, you know, constructive. And so I would like to understand how you've gone about it.
Also constructive, but also tough.
Yes, definitely.
Like I'm really a people leader, and I'm very empathic, and I'm trying to really understand people and trying to see how I can help them tap more into their potential. Right, that's my role.
Yeah.
Right, it's not my role to tell you what to do. It's my role to help you to identify where you can thrive and create opportunities where you can shine. Yeah. For me, ego is destroying team. Yeah. And that's the one thing I'm really super tough on. Yeah. It's unacceptable. Yeah. Because that has a wave effect. Yeah. If it's about one person, then it doesn't work. Then the whole system breaks. Yeah. No, I agree. But what if that person with that level of ego is a peer or is a superior? Then how do you handle that? Managing, but it not engaging much, which may be good or not. I don't know, but it's energy draining. It is energy draining. And I'm in a corporation with 1 million opportunities, and I have a very wide spectrum of interests and experience. Yeah. And a lot of passions. So I just like, do your thing. It's an energy drainer because it's not. if you don't have the same set of values, and like, of course I try to connect, right? I try to have this conversation as well. So, but when I realize conversations are not there, or people are only dedicating time to me for manipulation, or because they want something or something, then that's not healthy for the business, and also not for me.
No.
And so I'm finding my way around, I guess.
Yeah. I know that you've been working on a series called Curious Bridges.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
So Curious Bridges is an initiative I started last year, and it was triggered by the observation that on social media and everywhere the tone of voice just changed. And we as a design profession, we are not like, we need to do better. We used to post and share and learn together, and now it's a lot of posting to posing or to
provoke.
Be right and provoke. And that causes a spiral of conversation, of negative impact on how we are seen as a profession, and it also mentally, and so calling out the problem is one thing, and I was thinking about, okay, what can I do about solving this? And so I started this initiative called Curious Bridges, and with a focus on leading as a human, human-centered design, and life-centered design, everything in design and above, and leadership, and inclusivity. So themes and topics which are so close to my heart.
Yeah.
And I reached out to my network and started to do interviews with people across the globe, so different design leaders. In the first round, I'm right now doing everything around like human-centered leadership, and so leading as a human pretty much. And interview people from, I have Norway, Finland, India, Australia, Netherlands and Germany. So trying to get the different cultural perspectives, and trying to understand also what, how they lead, how they build teams, how they work, and how their context and the value system you are growing up or you're working in, how that informs how you lead. And how does your culture inform how you lead? And because you may be growing up, so I have one wonderful person who is from India, grew up and worked for a long time in India, built up for IBM design studios and whatnot, and moved to Australia. So what's the difference there? Because you have this culture, but you have a different culture context, and what do you bring with you? And so trying to zoom a little bit into that to foster constructive conversation. And in parallel, did a lot of like data collection research myself, being a nerd a bit, and trying to really
This could be a PhD.
It could be. I'm like really trying to understand, like, okay, what is it about leadership, and what is it about different cultures, and how does it all coming together, and what's inclusivity anyway, and why are we talking still about human-centered leadership instead of like bigger, you know,
human,
planet and life-centered and whatnot. So and so I'm being a mom, being full-time working, taking care of parents, and so a lot going on in my life. So I haven't published it yet, but it's close to be published. And I will mainly in the beginning post just the interviews and post a little bit of a curation and summary. And then the next round will be more about regenerative sustainability leadership on that scale, and also design around that scale. And I'm quite open on how to shape it, but really I'm interested in the lenses of culture and the lenses of constructive. Like, let's listen to each other again, and let's see how this is where this is all landing. But that was just something very exciting also to do.
And if people want to check that out, where do they go?
CuriousBridges.com.
CuriousBridges.com. That's it.
Yes, you can sign up for an email, and I will inform you once things are published. And
okay, the other question I wanted to ask you is your community work. You mentioned it briefly before. But can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like what kind of community work you do?
So I think the big shift in my career as well was 2010 when I went to the Interaction to Savannah, and it was done by the IXDA, so Interaction Design Association, and it was the first time I flew over, and it was like finding my professional home. It was very interesting. I was like, okay, this is my home. It was really like coming home. It's hard to describe, but I was there by myself. I didn't know anyone. And then after I left, I had a bunch of friends and friends ever since.
Nice.
So it became kind of an IXDA family, which is global. 2 weeks after I came back, I started the local chapter for the IXDA in Hamburg.
Okay.
I was like, I need to do this. I need to stay connected. This is really, it gave me so much energy. And and from there I became regional coordinator for first Africa and Europe. And then we brought, Africa was evolving so much that we brought someone in there. And then after a while, I was also co-founding the Interaction Awards. It was like for Europe, responsible connecting Europe to the awards, and being then on the board at one point for many years, and driving from there the community. So that was always my connecting the community, being responsible for the regional coordinators, and they are connecting, and that we are connecting again, that we as a community talking, that we are exchanging and sharing. And I'm still advising here and there and with that organization, but the family and especially Europe, we built a very, very strong European IXDA family, and we're meeting every year in Berlin, and it's still there.
Nice,
it's still very much connected. And I must say this has changed my life, my professional life very much, because I found I had mentors, fantastic female leaders I would have never met otherwise, like VP LinkedIn, senior VP Adobe, like really big corporations and coaches and like absolutely wonderful humans, and learned so much, again, culture, right? So all of a sudden you were on stage in Rio because I was in the jury for the awards, and then you're exposed to all of these different cultures, and all through my community work. I can only recommend it to anyone to engage with whatever you're passionate about in design, and help the profession to move forward and have conversations and learn from each other. It's a very, very fascinating experience.
Nice. Seems like you have strong values that guide your life and work.
Yes.
And I would like to understand in what way you manage to integrate those values and purpose into your work on a daily basis.
So one part is how I'm leading, very caring, supporting, empathic, yet strong. And I also uncovered a lot of boys club or females who are behaving like they are in the boys club. So that's also the power females who take over this typical stereotyping male behavior to get somewhere. So what I'm doing is I was at Adidas. I was leading the female leadership pillar, and organized events and conversations, and built a little community, or helped building this and shaping this community, ran within the organization, getting sponsoring money for events and stuff, and kept going when I really wanted to have a speaker, and I'm like, no, I need this. And I do similar things at IKEA. So at IKEA, I'm now a sponsor for Women in Tech in Amsterdam. And so also there, we're trying to foster these conversations, participating and doing leadership trainings, and trying to really bring this into the teams as well. Sustainability, a big topic of mine, and the whole purpose, Let's Talk IKEA Foundation. So I'm super excited that I became ambassador for the IKEA Foundation.
Oh, nice!
For this year.
Yeah.
It just started, and I will go to India in the beginning of June to get to know the work we're doing, because this is so connected also to IKEA, right? 15% of the revenue goes into the foundation, and so there's this purpose, and you can, you feed into the engine, even though it's still business and it's retail, but it's like still doing good and bringing a dent. And so. Investing a lot of also free time, right? It's a busy job, so I'm putting additional time in to drive these things and foster conversations, and going on conferences, talking about things.
Nice.
As well. So I guess that's how I try to bring that in, because that also gives me energy, and that then also helps me in navigating organizations.
Okay, well, usually my last question is one about the future and about hope. And I would like to understand, what is your hope for the future?
I hope that we stop talking ownership and collaborating together and creating really impact at scale. It doesn't matter who's in the lead. It really matters who can bring the most value and that we are looking eye to eye. That's one part within organizations and supporting each other more. I think that's super needed. This tendency in general, what I mentioned earlier about the polarization, I think humans tend to do that when everything gets too complex. And that is also within organizations, right? And then it goes off, the balance goes off. So I'm hoping for that. And then, life-centered design, like really plan it. Like how can we create personas which are not human? How can we bring other elements into our design work and into the business, but in a meaningful way? So that's really like rethinking business models and rethinking how are we doing KPIs, rethinking, do we need every meeting with everybody on the camera all the time, while we are very much aware that we're killing trees by doing so, even though when it's a meeting of 1 hour download presentation versus conversation, right? So this more consciousness, I think I'm hoping for.
Nice. Okay, well, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for
sharing your story. You are the last interview of this season. So we are done for season 1, you guys. And that's it. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Folks, this was the last episode of season 1. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I loved recording it. If you would like to keep following my work, please subscribe at designmavericks.substack.com. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Goodbye!